left, I have John Bailey, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and member of Virginia's AI Task Force under Governor Glenn Youngkin. To his left, we have Afua Bruce, who is, among many things, the author of The Tech That Comes Next, How Changemakers, Technologists, and Philanthropists Can Build an Equitable World. And to her left, Martin Svensson, Managing Director of AI Sweden. And last, but very much not least, may I put your hands together for Governor Philip D. Murphy, 56th Governor of my home state, the great state of New Jersey. Governor, welcome.
Excuse us. I guess timing is everything, right?
Make you look good.
Hi, Jeff. How are you? Deep thanks. Hello, everybody. Contrary to our reputation, apparently you don't come to New Jersey in June for the weather. So I apologize in advance for that. Incredibly honored to be here. I want to thank Jen and her entire team at Princeton, the NGA, which I know is part of this, an organization that I formerly chaired, Innovate US, our team, Beth and other colleagues from the state of New Jersey, and thrilled to welcome so many states and municipalities and other entities from around the country. So great to be here. Obviously, really cool to be on this panel. Joe, nice to see you again. John, nice to see you again. I spoke at let me back up and say that New Jersey really hand in glove with Princeton a couple of years ago I'm dating myself, but for those of you who remember the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, we held hands and jumped into the AI space. Beth became our senior advisor in government. We formed the NJ AI Hub with Princeton University, and since then have added Microsoft and CoreWeave, a hyperscaler, which happens to be headquartered here in New Jersey. And, we're all in. And what that means depends on the dimension, I think, through which you look at this. And I think we all acknowledge, I know this gathering is formed around what can go right with AI. And I don't think we'd be all in if we didn't think that the probabilities were very high that a lot of good things could go right with AI. But I think that we also have to acknowledge some of the tensions that are still playing themselves out. Is this, there's a big piece in the FT today, efficiency versus creativity. Is this going to make our life more efficient, or are we going to uncover the next big thing? And how's that going to play out? Upskilling versus the fears that a lot of folks, I think, rightfully have that their job's going to get replaced. And some companies that are established on that very premise, to pick a second one, right outcomes versus wrong outcomes. We're going to put powerful weapons in the hands of folks, and will they do right by that? So those are three tensions or dimensions that I think Afua, I want to ask you in a minute about equity. Is this going to be something that is a huge tool for the few, a huge wealth generator, or are we going to be able to give access to this realm, not even technology, but realm to everybody and not just a few? So honored to be here today. I'm the least qualified person, I think, in the room to opine on this. So let's get on with the program. I did something similar to this, Martin, in London in November, and everybody was talking about Sweden as sort of the role model. So would love to start by, first of all, thanks for schlepping all the way to Princeton. Again, we didn't do right by you in terms of what we normally look like in June, but we'll hopefully make it up as the week goes on. What have you done right? Why has everybody got Sweden up on a pedestal, and what can we learn from what you all are doing?
Well, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. Well, from my perspective, I'm not sure that we are that great as you say, but we tend to look at what we can improve, maybe. So we have that perspective. So I represent a country that is about the size of many of your states, 10 million people. We have a very, very decentralized public sector that constitutes half our GDP. We have a very diverse industry, business community with some very, very strong, well-known international companies, but also a very rich set across many, many sectors. And I think what we have done right is that we have, since many years, and Sweden has played an important role, we have focused on adoption. Adoption, yeah. So we have a big push into the fundamental research by one of our large families in Sweden, but Sweden has from start really focused on AI adoption, getting AI to use, and I think that has helped us tremendously. And another thing that we have done is that we have combined the forces of public sector with private sector. We realized early that the questions, some of you, that you mentioned, are exactly the same, whether you're in a private company or a public organization. And if we can talk about them in these kind of forums and also go beyond convening, also have concrete collaboration, we can move things forward. So I think what has happened now over, let's say, the last 3 to 4 years is that our Swedish need for consensus is starting to actually happen. In Sweden, we don't want to be the first one. But if 2 or 3 or 4 organizations or individuals have decided to embark on an idea, we are very happy to join the train. And that is starting to happen. And the conversation has really, really shifted over the last couple of years. So I think we're on a good path. We have lots and lots of initiatives across sectors, across public sector, across the country. Yet I would say very few initiatives are deployed and generate real value. But we're getting there slowly.
One quick observation. We in New Jersey in government, we always like to say we're the first, we're the biggest, the strongest. Sometimes that's not necessarily the smart move. Let somebody else get there first. Learn from them. One that has nothing to do with today, but on a college campus I know is quite relevant. We were not the first to legalize adult use cannabis. We learned, make sure you're paying attention out there, but we learned from others, and we were happy not to be number one. On adoption, did you use the so-called carrot or the stick to get folks to adopt?
No, in Sweden you can only use carrot. There's nothing else. I mean, our system doesn't allow anything like that. So you really need to get a lot of people on the train and be interested and wanting to be part of something new.
We use both in New Jersey.
That's good.
That's for a different conversation. John, same thing. You're obviously a senior fellow at AEI, but you're also, for the purposes of today, importantly advising Governor Youngkin on the Commonwealth of Virginia strategy. You all are deemed to be doing a really good job. Any pearls of wisdom for this group?
Just that this is the technology that is best learned by doing. And I think there's often in public sector, we're waiting for someone else to go first, and maybe we can learn from them. And I think the challenge with this technology is that it's improving so rapidly. That it's getting more powerful. There's just more capabilities. And so the longer you wait, the further you are behind and the more overwhelming it can feel like sometimes. So it's better to jump in. It's better to do it with what you're doing right now, which is in partnership with one another as states that are going through and trying to learn about what are the best use cases, what are some of the risks, and also where are those biggest opportunities. But it's also in partnership, I think, with research institutions, with AI researchers, with a lot of other people in this room that are helping to build up capacity as well. So I think if they say in Africa that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I think that is where we are in this like very early journey with AI, is that we need to go together and we need to do that in partnership and again, try to help maximize all those benefits, because I do think this is going to revolutionize government delivery. It's going to help us, I think, if we do it right, restore a lot of trust in government. It's going to let us do a lot of things we could never have done before, because we're just not going to be able to hire all the government employees that we need for different types of services. We're going to be able to do more with less. But also, it's going to help us with restoring trust, I think, and also, and more importantly, delivering benefits to some of our most unserved and underserved populations.
Let me ask you this, because I find this to be the case, and I think my colleagues in the Jersey side would agree. There's a fair amount of uncomfortableness, if that's a word, because you're kind of you find yourself in the room with no lights on, looking for the light switch in a lot of these. How should we feel about that? Is that something we should just sort of get used to and accept that it's, when we're so early in a realm like this, that it's part of the terrain?
Yeah, I think that feeling is normal. It's normal too. I'll say I spent a fair amount of time in Silicon Valley, and even the tech CEOs out there are feeling the same way as well. I mean, they're creating these incredibly powerful systems and models, but they don't know the use cases. They also don't know some of the risks as well. And so that feeling that this feels new, it feels uncomfortable, you're uncertain, I think is like happening across Fortune 500 companies. It's happening in Silicon Valley companies. It's happening with us in the public service as well. So I would say just embrace that feeling, lean into it. And again, that's where learning and partnership, I think, comes into play.
That feels like good advice, because I fear that the default otherwise would be to just pull out and go to something that you feel like you can be comfortable with, right? Thank you for that. Afua, nice to meet you and nice to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I previewed, you're one of the founders of A&B Advisory Group. You've had a lot of higher ed affiliations. I know Carnegie Mellon, among others. How should we think about this question of equity? You see, among other things, Meta, I think, committing $15 billion last week to fold in scale AI. You see huge numbers. You see a finite, almost finite cast of characters being talked about and written about. How do we break through that and make sure that as generative AI gets to the point of real, whether it's efficiency or creativity or whatever it might be, that everybody can access that and not a few?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one that we ask ourselves every time there's some type of technological innovation. 20 years ago, there was a big push for if we just get screens in the hands of more people with efforts like one laptop per child and others, like we'll magically solve inequity. And 10, 15 years ago, right, thinking about big data, if we just collect more data, then we will solve all of the world's problems. And yet, even with those efforts, here we are, and we're seeing income inequality and a lot of other types of inequality really exacerbated and much larger than they were even just 2 decades ago. So when it comes to how can we make sure that AI is developed and deployed in ways that do actually benefit people, I think it's about choices, right? AI is not just sort of created from the sky. You don't go and scoop out a bucket of AI algorithms, right? Individuals are making these choices. Individuals are deciding the use cases. They're deciding how the algorithms themselves are programmed, what weights are given where, what is deemed to be acceptable or unacceptable. And we can make choices about who we want to include in that process and how we want to set standards for what's acceptable, for how we incorporate lived experience and human experience, and how we set standards for who will be affected and how we define and repair harm.
Somebody said to me recently, first of all, that's a great frame in which to think about this, that it's possible that the residents of a state or a city or wherever you might be, that their first interaction with generative artificial intelligence might be with government, as opposed to in some other realm. That feels right to me. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that what's exciting about this moment and so many people adopting generative AI in different ways is that people will interact with it in many different ways, with how they use their computers, with how they shop, and certainly with how they access government benefits, how they provide feedback to their governments in other ways. And so that's why I think it's imperative for whoever is developing technology, but especially governments who are developing AI, to really think about what that looks like and what, again, is deemed acceptable and what is deemed harmful. I think that generative AI especially is, again, an opportunity to do some new things and engage in ways that we haven't engaged in before. But also we have to make sure that our pursuit of technology, our harnessing of the power of generative AI, as others, as people say, including myself, honestly, that we don't do that at the expense of trust, and we don't do that at the expense of agency of individuals.
Well said. John, let me come back to you with a two-parter. Not to pick your favorite child, but are there other states out there that the Commonwealth of Virginia looks to and say that they're really doing a good job embracing AI? Separate question, kind of distinct from that one. How much of your time do you spend advising on more efficient government services, delivering services to residents, versus the economic development aspect of this, attracting startups, talent, etc.?
Well, New Jersey is.
Excuse me.
That's right. Just you can Venmo me.
Excuse me.
No,
set up. I apologize.
But no, it's great. New Jersey has been a leader, especially with GovLab and in some of the AI systems, and just a lot of your digital delivery. I think has been an inspiration. We've been inspired by Governor DeWine in Ohio has been using AI to look at regulations and trying to identify what regulations can be reduced, which ones are duplicative, which ones are maybe redundant. And so that's when it's not terribly customer facing. It's a little bit more internal, but huge impacts externally. Governor Westmore and Shapiro have AI directors that are really taking a whole government approach. I think some of us saw Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania doing the OpenAI ChatGPT pilot. And one of the things they found is, again, without even radical sort of digital delivery, just getting these hands in the tools of government service workers helped free up, I think it was like 90 minutes a week, which is a lot. And so, again, I think those are like early use cases, but also inspirational, I think, in terms of us thinking about like where to go. I think there's a lot of other applications out there too. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. Almost everyone out there right now is talking about AI agents. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I know we have some conversations here later on today too. And also multimodal. Now, right now, I think a lot of us are just thinking about Gen AI and AI in the sense of text. So how can a citizen text a government AI assistant, and how does that AI assistant text back? But really kind of where Silicon Valley is focused right now is multimodal. What happens when AI can see something through an image or see something through video? The video understanding is just getting better and better almost month by month. And also when AI talks to you and when you can talk back to it. And we've been seeing some amazing applications of that in healthcare. NVIDIA has an investment in something called Hippocratic AI, where it's an AI nurse that does patient intake and outtake and monitoring, and it sounds like a real human being. There's a lot of testing that goes around it, and they're finding that people that are engaging with these AI assistants think it's more empathetic than even some of the AI doctors that they often come in contact with. And I think the point is, like, how do we start leveraging some of that to improve some of our customer service, whether it's in taxes, benefit enrollment, DMV? There's just a lot of different applications now to start bringing multimodal in the government service.
How about a real quickie on how much of your time is on advising government service stuff versus economic development in the?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I would say there's a lot of trying to think about it, just how to use AI to make government better and deliver better. But also, I think every state right now is wrestling with how do you use AI to attract and build their economic development. That comes back to energy policy. You can't really sort of separate, I think, some of these AI models from energy policy. And NGA has been having some amazing, robust conversations with a bipartisan group of governors around that. But it's also about how do you use AI to enhance your economic competitiveness. I think this is going to be an amazing set of tools for small business owners. So this goes back to the equity that, if you think about these AI systems is almost democratizing access to expertise. And all of a sudden, when you're a small business owner, you don't necessarily have access to an expert marketer or someone to help you with pricing. But now all of a sudden in your pocket with these models, you have an SEO expert, you have a marketing expert, you have a pricing expert, you have a product expert. And how can we use all this expertise that was only in the realm of pretty large businesses and enterprises and now are in the hands of nonprofits and small businesses. But that's not going to happen on its own. It's going to need AI literacy. It's going to need workforce development and upskilling and reskilling. It's going to need a lot more training to help unlock that opportunity.
Well said. You mentioned the NGA. Tim Bluth is here with his colleagues. One of the last remaining bipartisan bastions in America, and this is a great example of a theme or a topic, a policy area where there is robust across the aisle sharing best practices, both through the NGA and then bilaterally. Let me maybe jump to Martin and ask a similar question. Other countries out there doing it really well that Sweden and your colleagues look up to? And secondly, to what extent is your leadership in delivering services leading as well to economic development benefits, where talent wants to come to Sweden, that venture capital wants to follow that talent, where there's a developing, if you will, of an ecosystem in Sweden because of your perceived leadership?
Yeah, so first countries, let's include states then. We like people that are all in, as yourself. We've been on the ground in Canada, in Montreal for a couple of years. We built all the relationships there we needed. We look up to them for their competence concentration they have built. Just astonishing. We don't see any country holistically doing this perfectly, I would say. But there are a number of things. We look to countries that have implemented task forces directly under the top management of national governments. We look at some European countries that are kind of investing together with the European Union to maximize the infrastructure in their country, and so on. Finland is one good example. So there are a number. But there are many things that needs to come into place. Energy was mentioned. I was in the Swedish government's AI commission last year. We really looked at this broadly. So there are many aspects that you need to kind of work on and provide set the prerequisites for both public and private organizations to create, to go on their adoption journeys, if you wish. Right? As I said in the beginning, I think we have really combined the economic growth and adoption in public sector in one push. But competitiveness and growth is a very, very big topic in the European Union now. We had a big report coming out last year that really was quite alarming, actually, for European growth. So this is a topic that is coming up more and more. We have been very proud to regulate first on AI, and now there is a shift in sentiment around that. Rather, we need to make it easier to actually do useful things with AI. So these topics are still very much debated. I think that one thing that I can add to what has been said is that we can't only think about economic growth in terms of new companies. We also need to think about how do we actually get AI into our incumbent companies, and where we also have a lot of data that hasn't been used really. So industries that have been around for decades, they also need to adopt this to stay competitive. And
I don't know that there's time for it today at some point, but the whole notion of the EU regulating AI is an early mover, and now sort of sensing a reconsideration of that. That reverberates through a lot of, in general, a great Liat Krawczyk is the new executive director of the NGAI Hub. By the way, Hillary Parker, hello to you as well from Team Princeton. Regulation, do you do it at the state level? Do you stay back? If the federal government does it, to what extent should it be deeply felt versus not deeply felt? Seems to be a big topic at some point, probably worth hitting today or at some other point. Thank you for that. Well, let me ask you a question. I mentioned you've had a bunch of different higher ed affiliations. I mentioned Carnegie Mellon, but Stanford and others over the years. Is the scholarship around democratization of generative AI, is that as deep as it should be? I know Princeton University takes it deadly seriously. And then secondly, do you think inside the boardrooms of these, whether it's OpenAI or you name Anthropic or some of the big guys, Meta, Google and others, Amazon. Is that a central democratization equity? Is it either in scholarship and or in practice in the private sector? Is it at center stage as it should be?
So I think that from the academic perspective, what is exciting is that generative AI specifically may be new, but AI isn't new. Technology isn't new. Programming isn't new. And so there's certainly a basis, a foundation of a number of experts at a number of institutions, certainly Princeton, and others. I have my Michigan shoes on today, and so University of Michigan, where I went. Go Blue! Thank you.
Purdue in college.
It didn't really go with my outfit,
Okay.
so.
Just checking.
But there are a number of institutions and a number of scholars who have been doing research in what it takes to develop technology well and to consider the socio-technological factors for decades. And so I think part of this moment is also referring to the literature that is there, building on top of a lot of really solid work that has been done for decades and translating that into practice. Last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, Google and its development of the Pixel camera leveraged some academic experts who were working at this intersection of how do we apply some of the research to practice, and used it to develop the Pixel camera in a new way that then captured darker skin tones better in a number of different lighting conditions, which for people like myself is a very big deal when you're taking pictures in different places. And so I think that in some cases, in some tech companies, there are active thoughts about how do we develop our products better? How do we apply some of this technology better? How do we apply some of the research better? I certainly think it could be improved. I think also it is good business, right? Building products that can work for more people is good business. It expands your market, expands your profitability chances, and others. And so I think there's opportunity to do that even more and to increase the conversation there.
Opportunity for a shameless pitch here. A&B Advisory Group. Just give us 20 seconds on what that is and when should we and why should we call you?
Thank you so much for that question. Absolutely. A&B Advisory Group, we work with organizations across sector on applying responsible technology and data practices. So this includes general tech strategy, it includes AI strategy, it includes tech transformation efforts. And so making sure your organizational change will stick in your organization.
Fantastic. I know the clock is running short. Maybe one buzzer round question going from left to right. So Martin, Afua, and then John. What's a single step that you'd recommend any state or municipality could take in the next, say, 90 days to accelerate or embed their leadership in the broad field of artificial intelligence? What's a specific move on the chessboard that you'd recommend folks take?
All right, let's connect that then to what's said initially here from Arvind. I think it is a marathon. Organize yourself for that marathon. We've learned this now the last couple of years, that really think about how you build competence within your organization for the long run, because it's not the first use case that will be the most exciting one. So think long term, build competence, and see it as a long journey.
Well said. Afua.
Develop partnerships now. I worked with an organization, quill.org, earlier this year and a lot of last year. They're an educational tech organization, and think of it basically as providing English and comprehension coaching to students. And the way that they adopted generative AI was to go to their teachers' council of hundreds of teachers across the U.S. and give the teachers prompts and have the teachers write down their own responses and how they would correct students' responses. And that became the basis of their training set. And so then as they developed their tool, they were able to actually have essentially teacher informed feedback that is given to students. So still maintaining the expertise of the teacher, maintaining the respect of the student, and ultimately giving strong outcomes for the learners. But that was really built and really possible because they had invested the time to develop a teachers council over the past several years. They had invested the time in organizing their own organization to actually listen to that external expertise and pair that with their developers. So I would say my recommendation is to build some strong partnerships now.
Great stuff, John. Back clean
Great.
up for us.
All right. Just two thoughts. One is just to echo. I think the first step in an AI strategy is your own internal capacity. So building up the capacity of your leaders, of your tech leaders, and I think you do that through partnerships. And you have so many great leaders and organizations in this room and on the stage. We have Renaissance Philanthropy. We have CASA's organization. We have Gov Labs. There's USDR. There's so many groups in here that could be a great partner with you to take this sort of cutting edge that's right on the horizon and the far horizon, sort of bring it into your organization to help you sort of build those capacity. But again, the best tech strategy starts internal and starts with building your own human capital capacity. And the second is just start encouraging your leaders to play with it. I think we have a generation of leaders that played with ChatGPT 2.5 and got it to write a speech or a press release, and they stopped. And if you play with some of the new tools, you just start seeing a whole lot of other use cases emerge. You start seeing some risks emerge as well, but they only become evident as you play with it and engage with it. And so just host little mini training sessions for your leaders, for your staff, and just let them sort of play and engage with the tools and see what comes up, both in terms of risks, but also hopefully in terms of a lot of the opportunities.
I love that last point. I hold a mirror up to myself. Just jump on the sandbox and play around for a bit and stay at it, because frankly, what it is today versus what it was 6 months ago or will be 6 months from now could be light years different. Thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you for having me. Let's hear it for John, Afua, and Mark.